Hi, this is Matthew Cheung. I'm CEO of ipushpull, and thanks for joining us on today's podcast where we're going to be talking about ChatGPT. We have Imran Ahmed joining me, and Imran is the newest and latest employee of ipushpull, and he's come in as our web development lead. Hi, Imran.
Hi, Matt. So I joined ipushpull back in January as a lead web developer to try and put some focus on the UI and UX. So my background is I've been working in fintech financial services for about 25 years. I've always worked as a developer. So I've done several years over at UBS, Credit Suisse, London Stock Exchange. And I've got a wide understanding of technology, although I'm quite heavily focused on front-end stuff. So I've got a good grasp of AI, crypto, and all the latest web dev technologies as well.
And you've also got a very famous son. Tell us about him quickly.
Okay, so my son Ben, he's going to turn 14 in March now, but when he was 12 years old, he released his NFT collection called Weird Whales, and at the time he was like the youngest person in the world to release an NFT collection, and this was right bang in the middle of the whole bull run which had just been kicked off around NFTs and stuff. So he was like very, very early, and that's traded around $5 million for something that he built at home in his spare time. And then off the back of that, he got like loads of press coverage, BBC, New York Times, Daily Mail, Sun, practically everywhere if you go and search his name on the internet. So yeah, so that's kind of how I got pulled into like NFTs, but I always had an interest in crypto and stuff as well. So I've got a good convergence of stuff that's happening in my professional life around AI, crypto, NFTs, and financial services.
That's how we end up meeting and you eventually joining ipushpull through your son. So today we're going to talk about what is ChatGPT, who is OpenAI, and what use cases are there in financial markets for ChatGPT. And then from that, we'll kind of look at where are chatbots today, and then what can people do to get started. Let's kick off and just look at ChatGPT itself. And it's been a phenomenal rise of technology that's happened, or looks like it's happened very, very rapidly. It was launched back in the end of November. ChatGPT then hit 1 million users after a week, and then hit 100 million users after 1 month. So that's the fastest growing app of all time. But remember, it's based on artificial intelligence, which has actually been around since the end of World War II. So it's not a technology that suddenly appeared out of nowhere. It's a technology that's slowly grown through many, many decades, has seen lots of what they call AI winters, where the technology was looking very hopeful, and then it kind of disappeared again, and then now has resurfaced in what's very much an interface moment, where ChatGPT essentially is a large language model which can interpret natural language and give responses as if it were a human. And implicitly, it's developed a theory for meaningful sentences and can understand the fundamental principles of human language. I mean, Imran, you and I have been using it a lot in the last couple of months. We've even just subscribed to ChatGPT Plus, which is $20 a month, allows you to access it at any time and is a lot faster. But we can see lots of benefits already, right?
Yeah, I mean, even before ChatGPT, I was using like GitHub Copilot in my professional life, which is also built on the GPT model, and that was like trained against loads of like public commits on open source projects, and that's been like really good. One thing we have to remember with these tools, they're not replacements at the moment. They're very, very good for like assistance. So you still need like high level professionals, but what they do is they massively reduce the amount of like boilerplate stuff you need to do. So I'm specifically using it in day-to-day development, although I have had play around in my personal life as well, like getting it to write poems and creating images using DALL-E and stuff like that. But professionally, I use it predominantly for coding. And as you say, like these technologies have been around for like 30, 40 years. But I think what's different with this iteration is it actually feels like intelligence. It's very interactive when you converse with it, and it's people are so used to like searching the web, but when you use this just as a search tool and you can prompt it and then re-prompt it again based upon the information that it gives you. You really start to understand how powerful this stuff is.
And talking about power, the GPT large language models, if you look at GPT-3, that's 100 times larger than GPT-2 with 175 billion parameters. And GPT-4, which apparently has been kind of alpha tested out in West Coast amongst some close friends of OpenAI, apparently that's going to be 500 times the size of GPT-3. The GPT-4 should be coming sometime this year. That will give you 100 trillion parameters versus 175 billion with GPT-3. So that's as many parameters as the brain has synapses. So some of the tweets we've seen from people like Sam Altman and other people apparently hinting at GPT-4 is able to pass the Turing test. And what the Turing test is, test of deception, essentially fooling someone that an AI could theoretically pass a test without it possessing intelligence. And in a human sense, it's quite narrow because it's exclusively focused on linguistics. But apparently that's something which GPT-4 can pass, which is a big milestone for AI. One of the things with AI is obviously it's an exponential technology, and exponential technologies at the beginning are quite deceptive and they look like they move quite slowly, which is probably what's happened over the last 30, 40 years. But then quite quickly, everything is doubling, if not more than doubling, with GPT-4 having 500 times the size of model as GPT-3. So you can quite quickly see how things are going to progress. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think progression in human intelligence, not just in technology, is going to be really profound. So something Sam Altman, who's one of the founders along with Elon Musk of OpenAI, who's actually built these models, tweeted the other day is that he said we could have something similar to Moore's law around human intelligence. So Moore's law was a prediction that was made by Gordon Moore, the co-founder of Intel, around 1965, when he stated that the number of transistors on a microchip would double approximately every 2 years, leading to an exponential increase in compute power and a decrease in the cost of electronics. So if you imagine something like ChatGPT out in the wild now, everybody's using it, from school students to professionals. We could have, like, say, a doubling of human intelligence like every 2 years or something. And that's really mind-blowing when you think of it in that way. And there's another reason why I believe that this technology will spread really quickly, because it's being built on existing technological infrastructure. So the cloud infrastructure is already there. It's been around for about 10 years. It's well settled. So you can distribute these models to like millions of enterprises, billions of users around the world at, lightning quick speed and very, very low cost as well. So, I mean, if you had this model, say, like 30 years ago, we wouldn't have been able to distribute it as efficiently as we can today. So I think that's a really important point to note. Why this will spread so quick is because it's being built upon existing infrastructure, which we didn't have like 20 years ago.
And that's very much why Microsoft has invested in OpenAI, invested $1 billion a couple of years ago. And then last month in January 2023, they invested $10 billion, bringing OpenAI's valuation now to $29 billion. OpenAI, remember, they started actually as a non-profit. There was Sam Altman, who's the CEO, and he was also the CEO of Y Combinator, which is a very big, famous incubator. You also had people from Stripe. You had Reid Hoffman, the former LinkedIn founder, Peter Thiel, and then Elon Musk, like you just mentioned, Imran. I think Elon's story is quite interesting as well, because he actually stepped away in 2018 from OpenAI, even though he was one of the co-founders. He's no longer a stakeholder or anything to do with it. And some of that was the conflict around the work he was doing with Tesla. But more recently, we've seen Elon concerned about OpenAI because there's a number of guardrails that are there that are stopping it from making like controversial responses and racial slurs and sexist remarks. And that on its own doesn't sound too bad, but one of the things which there was a tweet thread which Elon Musk participated in, where a user was talking to ChatGPT and it refused to utter a racial slur after being presented with an odd hypothetical scenario where saying the slur would have prevented a nuclear bomb from going off. And then Elon tweeted it was concerning. But Elon now is recruiting AI researchers to create his own version of OpenAI, because he now thinks that it's a closed source maximum profit company controlled by Microsoft. But nonetheless, Microsoft is probably one of the reasons it's going to be able to be accessible inside enterprises, and people in financial market enterprises like we are and lots of other firms can start using it. There's also been a funny last few months where obviously Google is now very concerned about losing its domination in the search space because Microsoft has invested in ChatGPT. They brought it into Bing, and now Bing is seeing the biggest rise in user numbers in all of its history. So there's lots of interesting events that are happening already this year, and we'll continue to see that when GPT-4 comes out later in the year. Have you got anything to add to that, Imran?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the integration stuff is going to be really powerful. This is why I find it quite ironic when they start banning it in certain places, because it's obvious that the next version of Microsoft Office will have this embedded into it. Whether it'll be an add-on module or it's something that comes by default, we don't know yet. But it's going to work its way into, it already has into Bing. It'll be in Microsoft Word. It will be in Excel. It will be in PowerPoint. So I think rather than, ban this stuff, there's really got to be some, you need to embrace it and see how it can be useful as an assistance tool. I think it's also worth mentioning that I don't see this as being a false start. So we had like a false start around the web, early 90s when there was a whole .com boom, and we had like insane valuations around pets.com and stuff. We've had several false starts around crypto. I think where AI differs is what the web and what crypto try to do is they try to fundamentally redefine business processes. So if you take something like the job of an accountant, the web comes along and says, actually, your old model of doing everything in your office is not going to work. You need to be online. And then crypto will come along and say even further, oh, you need to be looking at tokenization. You need to be looking at on-chain strategies. You need to be looking at NFTs. But AI is a lot more subtle. What it does is it says that, look, you keep your existing business process as it is, but I can enhance it. So it doesn't try to redefine what an accountant does or how they operate their business. It just makes them a lot more efficient. So I think that aspect of AI is really powerful, and it's one of the reasons why I believe it'll take off a lot quicker than the internet and crypto did.
Exactly. It's all about productivity and acting as a co-pilot. I think in terms of, you were just talking about Microsoft rolling it out into different applications, they're due to roll out into Microsoft Teams any day now, what's called intelligent meetings. So you'll have an AI bot that sits in the meeting and at the end will provide you with meeting notes, provide you with next steps and tasks and so on. So the same stuff that someone in a meeting would be jotting down on a notepad, that can all be done for you, which means you're not worrying about taking notes, and instead you can participate in the meeting on a much greater level. So let's move on to use cases for ChatGPT in the financial markets. So we've already kind of touched on some of the general uses around productivity and efficiency. So that could be anything from helping to draft emails, helping to create blogs for a website from a more general level. And then from a developer's perspective, how would you be using a tool like this at the moment, Imran?
So a lot of development around is, so I always see development is part technical and it's part art. So it's a mixture of science and art. The science be completely commoditized by these AI tools. So all the developers really focused on is the art aspect of it, architecture and applications, integration with various different systems, making sure systems are well tested, stable, performant, scalable. But the whole like generating boilerplate code. Like if I need to write a depth first binary search, yeah, I've done it several times, but it might have been 10 years since I've written one. So rather than go to Google and search for it, in which they'll then take me to Stack Overflow, and I'll be browsing through the answers to see various different implementations, I can just get ChatGPT to throw it out. I can just give it a high level prompt. So, create a depth first binary search in JavaScript, TypeScript, Python, whatever language. And it creates like the bulk of it there. They're not always 100% perfect. You do get some like edge cases and some performance issues around them, but they're very, very good at doing them sort of problems. If you've seen like the Google type interviews where you have to do very algorithmic type questions, have to implement search algorithms and stuff, all of that stuff can just be chewed up by ChatGPT. So it kind of shows you how deficient them interview processes really are, because you can just commoditize all that stuff. So it's really good with that. What I've been using it myself, like sometimes I will write a function and I'll say write the unit tests for that function, and it just write all the boilerplate stuff for me, so I can just grab them unit tests. You can even give it existing code and say, look, how would I optimize this, convert this to a one-liner, make it more condensed, make it more terse. And we've already seen, I think, Stack Overflow traffic is down by 15% per month or something like that since ChatGPT has come out. I see this completely replacing Stack Overflow because it's interactive. You can have like a dialogue with it. Coding itself is very deterministic. So as long as you feed it with the correct like API documentations, a syntax, and it's trained on a huge amount of like open source coding data, as a coding tool assistance is unbelievably powerful. I mean, I could reduce teams from around 10 to 4 or 5 people that were really good with like prompt engineering and stuff. I mean, there was a tweet from one of the Tesla engineers a while back where he said that 85% of my coding is now being done by AI tools.
Yes, it's very, very disruptive for every single industry. And just looking specifically in financial markets, where a lot of our listeners will be, I was actually asking ChatGPT earlier where it thought there were use cases, and it kind of picked out, I think, two areas. One was around analysis and doing analysis for users, and the other is around kind of sweeping through documents or data. I mean, two sides of the same coin. On the analysis side, it was looking at or talking about sentiment analysis, looking at news articles when they're released, looking at social media, just enhancing some of those tools that are already out there that do some of that stuff, but then being able to handle that natural language piece of it. Using it for things like pattern spotting, which we've seen lots of algo funds already do that. Lots of black boxes and HFT funds and what have you already using technologies like this. But then this gives you, again, the ability to have that natural language element on top of it as well. And then that feeds into looking at documents, like in the OTC trading world, you have like swaps agreements, legal documents. Having ChatGPT being able to scan that for you is much quicker than a human doing it just on their own. And then you have the world of compliance as well. So things like trade surveillance, looking for unusual activity, risk management. So that was just some of the things that ChatGPT itself threw up when I was talking to it and prompting it in the right way. And then the obvious one is around client interaction, where a client is talking to the service provider. So on the retail banking side, you can kind of see those tools already in action, where they're quite simple and essentially kind of a tree decision type workflow. And then after you get so far with it, the bot may put you in touch with a human. Whereas having a ChatGPT bot inside of those chats, it means that the bot is able to handle much more complex queries and be able to respond in a natural language rather than predefined syntax. Any other use cases you can think of besides those, Imran?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of data processing, it's huge. Microsoft have recently done a deal with the London Stock Exchange, so I'm sure they're going to be wanting to get stacks of financial data in here. At the moment, it doesn't have any real-time data. GPT-3 doesn't, so you can't get it to tell you what is the current price of Bitcoin or a Tesla stock. But I'm sure that's going to be coming down the line as well. In terms of building out like quantitative models and stuff, if you want to write some code around building an interest rate swap, it's really good at doing stuff like that. You can ask it, what is an interest rate swap? Can you code me the skeleton of this class in any language you want as well? The other thing I found it's really good at is actually translation from language to language. So I had a friend who is a Turkish developer, and when I threw some problems at it, and then we asked it to translate them into Turkish, and he was like really impressed with the translation. He said the subtleties of the language it had picked up quite well. So remember, it's a global tool. It's not catered to the English speaking world. It's useful for pretty much anyone out there. So I think the language aspect of it was like really quite impressive as well.
Just picking up on your comment about Microsoft investing in LSEG, because that's quite a good segue into talking about chat as it is today, kind of the world before ChatGPT and where things are. So Microsoft invested $2 billion or 4% of LSEG's market cap. LSEG over the years has acquired lots of other companies, one of them being Refinitiv, which was formerly Reuters. So in the chat world, there is Refinitiv Messenger. So looking at the kind of chat landscape that you have at the moment, you've kind of got the big players in financial markets, so the likes of Bloomberg Chat. Obviously, that's been around for a long time. You've got people like Symphony, which has come around the last 7-8 years and beginning to get good traction across their customers. But the one now that people are looking at is Microsoft Teams, because Microsoft Teams is pretty much available on anyone's desktop because it's part of the Office suite. And looking at users of Microsoft Teams over the last couple of years since COVID, it went from kind of 10 million to 25 million to in the hundreds of millions already. So if you start bringing in ChatGPT into Teams, like we were talking about earlier, some of the features and functionality to help you use Teams in meetings and so on. But the other reason people use Teams is for chat, not just video calls. And if you combine, potentially you might have in kind of the chat ecosystem, if you've got Teams, Microsoft Teams and LSEG combined, like you said, LSEG has all of this financial market data, but they've got trading applications and systems. They've got an external directory of users with Refinitiv Messenger. So this year should see some interesting kind of responses from Microsoft and LSEG in that world to compete with Bloomberg Chat, to compete with Symphony. And then you've got all the other ones out there as well, like Slack and Ice Messenger and WhatsApp and WeChat. And we've had some inquiries for Skype. I didn't even know that was still around, but some users in South America that's still using Skype for trading workflows. But you're getting to this point now, there's actually this proliferation of chat. There's kind of too many things there. But taking kind of one piece of that aside, I mean, one of the interesting areas which ipushpull works a lot in is around chatbots. Now, putting ChatGPT, park that for one moment and just think about chatbots and what is the chatbot today. So how we're doing it as ipushpull, we allow a bot, a machine user that can sit in a chat room, that can connect into our service, and then we can connect into financial market data or another system or another service. And it means that you're allowing a user in a chat room to be able to use the bot to go and fetch information quickly and either sharing information or consuming information. Now, one of the things where ChatGPT becomes really interesting is because up until now, we've had to use like a predefined syntax or command line kind of interface so that people can use a bot and query data, get responses and so on. And our service sits in the middle and can map and transform chat messages into, say, fixed messages, for example. But one of the things ChatGPT can do, it's now got the ability for an ipushpull bot that's sitting in Symphony and Slack and any other platforms to understand those natural language inputs and then generate responses in a human-like way, which means that you don't need to be relying on syntax. So that's going to be an interesting thing that we're going to be looking at over the next year. And then, Imran, you've been looking into how you can use the APIs available directly from OpenAI and actually the ones from Microsoft.
Yeah, I mean, so the API feature was something that OpenAPI has released recently, and I think, as I mentioned before, this stuff is really scalable in a big way because you're only really paying for like tokens to actually use the API. The infrastructure is all hosted in the cloud. So I think this is going to be a big win. But just to get back to your point about using AI within banks and investment banks specifically, when you mention AI in investment banks, people automatically assume that it's going to be used as some kind of trading tool, or can I use this to trade the markets? Can I make money off this? But that's only a small, as you know, only a small percentage of what banks actually do. They have like big convoluted middle office and back office processes. So they have departments like HR, legal, compliance, procurement, accounting, product. AI can be used across the whole of that stack in the middle and the back office as well. So I think that's the one place where we will see lots of efficiency over the next 5 to 10 years. A lot of cost cutting, a lot of headcount reduction, because even so, saying it mergers and acquisitions, they have to draft like legal documents, reams of them. If you can imagine, if you can get the whole of LexisNexis data into something like ChatGPT and stuff, you could reduce the number of lawyers that you're hiring within a bank by at least 50, 60, 70%. So I think that's one thing people don't want to just focus on. Can I use AI as a trading tool to play the markets? Because I think that's just a small part of what AI can do within a bank.
The other piece as banks that want to be able to service their customers and improve the user experience for them, because if you can give the ability for your clients to self-serve information without having to bother the salespeople or the traders, it just helps make everyone more efficient. And I think that's probably the crux of what we're talking about here is efficiency. AI is a tool to make anyone using it more efficient in whatever they're doing and more productive. So I guess let's look at and finish up on how can people get to use and play around with chatbots and ChatGPT. Because on the ChatGPT side, one question which I'm sure a lot of people listening will be thinking about is, where's my data going? I spoke to someone from Microsoft a few weeks ago, and they said that's the main question. After they ask about, how can I connect into it, which is fairly straightforward. You don't need Azure hosting. You just need an Azure account, and you can hook into it. But the next question is, where does my data sit? And what we saw actually yesterday, it's March today, we saw the 1st of March, OpenAI came out and said that you can opt out of having, actually opt in if you want to have your data included for training the OpenAI models. So obviously, most financial institutions, there's a lot of sensitive financial information that might be going over these sort of channels. So that can be opted out. And then like any third-party service sitting on the cloud, the usual security measures will apply around, confidentiality of data. Some things will be fine to use ChatGPT for, others may not be. So that's something to kind of think about if you want to start consuming ChatGPT and the APIs and so on. And the other areas, I suppose, is where can you start using chatbots now already? People that are listening will be using Bloomberg Chat and Symphony, Teams, Slack, all of those major chat platforms. With ipushpull, with one connection to our service, you're able to access all of these different chat platforms through one bot framework. And with that one bot framework, you can configure a chatbot and it will work in all of the chat platforms that are connected. And one of the things which Imran is exploring at the moment is how can we use ChatGPT to enhance the interface and the natural language element of that. How's that been going so far, Imran?
Yeah, I mean, it's going really well. I mean, for our use case, it works well because we've got like a well-defined deterministic API. If we could feed that into some kind of AI model, a lot of our end clients could develop their bots and applications in a much more specific way that is more natural in language rather than having to code away with it. So I think that's going to be very powerful, is when you can take these models and you can start feeding in your own company data, docs, APIs that you don't really want to put into like a publicly accessible model.
And it's that ability to be able to query all of that information. I think one of the use cases that we'll be looking at ipushpull is the ability to have these kind of predictive analytics. And it's one of the things we're looking initially around, is it something that we need to start building ourselves? Or is it something we can use a model off the shelf? And that's exactly what now is available via Microsoft and OpenAI. So lots of tools that people can use straight away. Generative AI, which this kind of falls into, is a big thing at the moment. Lots of VC funding going to this area, but ChatGPT is not the only thing. There's 50, 100, 200 kind of platforms and applications out there where you can use AI and generative AI. But ChatGPT, because of the easy to use interface, that's the main reason it's taken off to 100 million users by 1 month after it was launched. So we'll just finish up now. So this was Matthew Cheung. I'm CEO of ipushpull, and I was joined by Imran Ahmed, our lead web developer. And if there's any further questions from listeners, then please get in touch with us. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Matt.